today I have my friends from American Folklife Center with me today. And American Folklife Center is the place in the library that's been around for 42 years. And it collects and documents and shares traditions and folklore. So we have two people who are going to tell you a little bit about what that means in the Library of Congress. Their names are Jennifer Cutting. Jennifer is a folklife specialist in American Folklife Center, and Steve Winick. And he's a writer, editor, and folklorist, and they're going to introduce you to the library's collections, and then we're going to do some super fun stuff. So let's get started. Yay.
So did you guys eat a lot of candy last night?
Yeah!
I can tell. I can tell. Well, we're going to give you something. We're going to start out with a song. If everybody is nice and quiet, we can learn the song together. This is a song from our collections at the American Folklife Center. And Steve is going to tell you a little bit about it.
Well, this is a song that was collected in Ireland in the 1950s from a singer named Seamus Ennis, and he was a great folklorist and singer and collector and played bagpipes. He did all kinds of great stuff. But one of the things he gave to our archive here was this song, which is all about a herring, and it's about the different parts of the herring and what you can make out of it. But of course, it's a foolish song because you can't really make all these things out of it.
Wait, we better check. Do you guys know what a herring is? What is a herring?
That.
What kind of animal?
This is not a herring.
What kind of animal is a herring?
You're thinking of a heron, so you're
Herring,
close.
You're close. Nope.
It's a fish.
Yay!
And around Ireland and the coast of Ireland, they fish for herring quite a lot. So people actually ate this fish a lot. Yeah.
My dad is like from Ireland.
Excellent. Well, so is Joe. He's going to tell you some stories in just a minute. And this song is from Ireland, too.
And it goes like this. I'm going to play it for you once so you get the idea in your head, how it sounds, and then we're going to have you sing along. Anybody know what instrument I'm playing? Okay, who else? That's right, it's an accordion. It's a button accordion. It's a special kind of accordion. Instead of piano keys, it has buttons. And the nickname for it is the squeeze box because I squeeze. And these are very, very popular in playing Irish traditional music. And they were around from about 1850. That's when they were mass produced and people could afford them. Yes?
Not from the 70s.
No, from
Not
the
from the-
1800s.
Not from the 70s.
Okay,
All right.
we're going to do the song now, so we'll teach you your part.
So your part is going to be, I'll sing la 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 la. You sing Aberrowlane, sing Aberrowlane.
Aberrowlane, sing Aberrowlane.
Aberrowlane, sing Aberrowlane.
And these are called nonsense syllables. They don't mean anything, they just sound funny.
That's right.
And then he sings again,
La 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 la.
and you go,
Aberrowlane, sing Aberrowlane.
and he sings,
La 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 la.
and you sing,
Aberrowlane, sing Aberrowlane. Indeed I have borne me herring to sing. Aberrowlane, sing Aberrowlane. There once was a man who came from Kinsale. Aberrowlane, sing Aberrowlane. And he had a herring for sale.
Great.
Guys, that was awesome. Thanks so much for singing along. And how about a thank you applause for Steve and Jennifer? And the magical thing about all these things is that you can find so many online, digital collections and songs and pictures and stories and all kinds of stuff. So I hope you check it out. So next up, we have our special guest, Joe Brennan, and he is from, we're going to hear some awesome stories. So let me tell you about him a little bit, okay? So here's a storyteller. Any of you guys storytellers? Who likes stories? You can tell stories. I think a lot of people can tell stories, and he became a professional storyteller. He's also a writer, and he grew up in Wexford, and he now lives in County Donegal in Ireland. He's traveled all over the world. He's told lots of stories, and he does workshops with all kinds of people, and he's been doing it for 18 years. That's quite a while. That's amazing. He's written a really awesome children's play called Starboy, and an early years theater show without words. And that was featured on Kids Euro Festival, and today's performance is also Kids Euro Festival 2018 feature, which is really awesome. And he is the author of Donegal Folktales, which he's going to tell you a little bit about. So how about we welcome Joe Brennan.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So, Halloween was yesterday, but this story is kind of related to Halloween. And it's about a man called Mcguire. And Mcguire lived a long time ago, hundreds of years ago in Ireland, in a place called County Fermanagh. And he was the leader of a great clan. And he was very strong and very powerful. And one thing that he was very proud of was the fact that he was great with horses. He could ride horses, he could train horses, and he could even heal horses. He would gather horses around him, and they would come up and they would practically talk to him. He was so talented with horses. Now, because of this, he was very proud of himself, and he liked to show off how good he was with horses. So one day, he decided that he would go out into the hills and capture a wild horse and bring it back and train that horse, and he promised that within 5 days, that horse would be eating out of his hand. Well, he gathered up some of his men, and off they went out into the wild hills. And they moved quietly but swiftly along by the hedges, looking this way and looking that way, till suddenly Mcguire raised a hand and said, "Be quiet." And they all crouched down, and they looked around, wondering what or where was the horse that Mcguire had spotted. And one of his men said, "Where is it, Don?" He said, "It's over there, look, in the corner of the field." And they all looked to the corner of the field, and there was a stand of oak trees. And you know what they saw among the oak trees?
A horse.
Nothing. They looked at each other. What's he looking at? "Where is it?" they said, Bin. "It's there," he said. "It's beautiful. It's a white horse, and it shimmers in the sunlight." And then suddenly Mcguire said, "Quick, it's away!" And he started to run after, because the white horse was galloping away. Now the men looked at each other, and they wondered, what is he looking at? What's happening? The thing is, Mcguire could see a horse, and it was a beautiful white horse. But the others could not see that horse. And the reason for this was that horse was an enchanted horse, a horse that had been sent by the fairy folk to lure Mcguire into the fairy world. And that's the only reason he could see it, and nobody else. Well, Mcguire ran across the fields as fast as he could, trying to keep up with the horse, determined that he was going to catch it. His men, although they were confused and wondered what was happening, they ran on as well, but they couldn't keep up with the horse, and they couldn't keep up with Mcguire. And the horse galloped on, and Mcguire kept on running. He looked back to see if his men were coming. He could see them in the distance, but he wanted to catch the horse. The horse started to move and gallop up a hill. It climbed higher and higher, and so too did Mcguire. And suddenly he lost view of the horse, and he ran even faster. And when he came to the crest of the hill, the horse had disappeared. But in front of him was a large, dark, black cave. And he could hear the horse. He could hear the horse galloping deeper and deeper under the ground, deeper and deeper into that cave. So looked back, and his men were at the bottom of the hill. He didn't want to lose sight. Well, at this stage he had lost sight, but he wanted to keep the horse in earshot. So he plunged on into the dark cave, and he went down deeper and deeper and deeper under the ground. He ran on and ran on. And he knew that there was danger, the possibility of danger in this cave. But he was determined to catch the horse. And as he ran, every so often, he threw his eyes over his shoulder so he could see the daylight above him to reassure him. And on he plunged, till all of a sudden he came to a sudden stop. He could no longer hear the horse's hooves. And he listened carefully. And all he could hear in that cavern was his ragged breath. And as his breath calmed, he took a deep gulp and he listened. And the horse, it seemed, had disappeared into thin air. He looked around. He couldn't see anything except the black gloom. And then he turned and looked back up to see where the sky was. But he couldn't see anything. It was black. He couldn't understand. He had only looked back a short time ago and he could see the sky. So he put his hands out and he ran forward, and suddenly he was stopped by a solid stone wall. He ran his hands along the wall, trying to find the gap that he had come through. But he couldn't find any gap. Somehow, the rock had rose behind him and he was trapped. He was trapped under the ground. And now he realized that he had been a fool. He'd been tricked. He'd been lured here. He wasn't quite sure by who. And he stood there trying to figure out how he was going to escape from this underground cavern. A dangerous place to be caught is underground. There's many ways out, but many ways to be trapped and to disappear. And as he stood there trying to figure this out, suddenly he heard what he could hear, a splashing noise. And the splashing noise had a rhythm to it. And he realized that it was the sound of oars being pulled through the water. And then in the distance, in the far off distance, he could see a light. And the light came closer and closer and closer. And eventually the light was strong enough to show that it was on the front of a small boat. And sitting in the boat were two small men pulling on the oars. And standing at the front of the boat was the king of the fairies himself. And when it came right towards Don Bin Mcguire, the king of the fairies called out, "Don Bin Mcguire, you're welcome, you're welcome. You're 100 times welcome to our world." And Don Bin Mcguire knew his manners. And he took off his hat and he bowed to the king of the fairies and he says, "It's a pleasure to be here, king." And the king said, "Come on to the boat." And Don Bin Mcguire climbed into the boat, and the men pulled on the oars and brought them across that underground lake all the way to the fairy world. And there, as they approached, there was music and dance, and there was laughter, and there was a great party in progress. And he could hear the music and the dancing, and the lights were twinkling to light up the party. But when they saw the boat coming, all of the fairies stopped their merriment. And they came to the shore, and they called out as one, "Don Bin Mcguire, you're welcome, you're welcome. You're 100 times welcome to our world." And Don Bin Mcguire jumped off the boat, and he joined in the celebrations and the great party. And the music was wonderful, the dancing was wonderful, and the food was incredible. And it all went on for days and days, and Don Bin Mcguire was enjoying himself. But even the best of parties get tiresome after a while. And eventually Don Bin Mcguire, he had had enough of this party, and he wanted to go home. He wanted to be above the ground where he could feel the sun on his face, the wind in his hair, and even the rain washing over him. He wanted to be back with his own people. And he sat in the corner, and he was very unhappy. And I have to tell you, the fairies don't like looking at people who are unhappy. And the king of the fairies says to him, "Don Bin Mcguire, what's wrong with you? You have a face on you there that, it'll turn milk sour." Oh, he said, "Look, I want to go back to my own world." He says, "What is the problem? Do you not like our welcome here?" Oh, he said, "The welcome is wonderful. Is our food not good enough for you?" "Well, the food is amazing." "The music then? Is there a problem with our music?" "Oh, now, king," he said, "everybody knows that fairy music is the best music." "Well, is it the dancing that doesn't meet your approval?" "No," he said, "the dancing's wonderful. I just want to be back with my own people. I want to feel the wind in my hair. I want to feel the sun on my face, even the rain washing over me. I want to ride on my horse across the land." The king of the fairies just laughed. He said, "You want to go back up there? But why? Why would you want to go back?" "It's my home," he said. "It's my family." And he looked at Don Bin Mcguire and he said, "How long do you think you've been here, Don Bin Mcguire?" Well, he said, "Maybe 4 days, maybe 5? He laughed loudly. 5 days? He says, no, you've been here 100 years. He said, that can't be possible. No, he said, that is impossible. He said, look, sure, I haven't aged a day. Ah, said the wee fairy, the king of the fairies. That's the gift of our world. Time here runs very slowly. It's very different from your world. You stay here, you'll stay young forever. Your world as you knew it, well, it's gone. Your family is gone. Your people are gone. All has changed above there. You don't want to go back there. Well, Donbin Mcguire heard this. Well, he was very sad. And he couldn't believe it in part. And eventually the king of the fairies was so fed up with looking at him, he says to him, okay, tomorrow is Halloween. And because of that, we are allowed to wander freely in the world. So you can take the Copplebone, that white horse that we sent to trick you, and you can ride the Copplebone back into your own world and see for yourself. You can see what it's like. You can feel the wind in your hair and the sun in your face and the rain. But you'll come back to us at the end of the day. And the next day, he jumped on the horse and he rode all the way up and through Fermanagh. And he rode all the places he thought he knew, and everything was changed. The world had changed so much. All of his family were gone, all the people he knew, and all the houses and forts had all gone. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that he'd been gone for so long. And he wondered if people would even know who Donbin Mcguire was. But nobody knew the name. Well, he went back to the fairy world. And he made the most of his life there. But every year on Halloween, he still comes up. And sometimes the fairies will say to him, we have a job for you. And that job usually means they want somebody. They want a young man or a young woman, and they want them brought down to the fairy world. Maybe they're good at music, maybe they're a good dancer or a good singer, and they want them to come and entertain them. And if that is the case, then Donbin Mcguire will look for them. And all Donbin Mcguire has to do is look into their eyes. And once he does that, they have to come with him. And when people started to disappear at Halloween, people knew the fairies were up to something. And they realized that whatever it was, it had to do with that white horse and the man on the white horse. So people, when they would hear a horse coming, they would turn their eyes away and they would not look up at the rider. And some people would take a branch of a tree called a rowan tree and a mountain ash. It's called a mountain ash or the rowan tree. It's got red berries on it. And they'd put that over their door. And that breaks the power of the fairies. And that would protect them. And to this day, people still do that. And Halloween is one of 2 nights that the fairy folk in Ireland can come and walk among us. And that is why the tradition of dressing up and disguising yourself started. Because if you dressed up and disguised yourself, well then the fairies wouldn't know who you are. And they'd pass on by and you'd be safe for another year. But if they came along and they could see you and they wanted you, well then they took you away. And that's the story of Donbin Mcguire and the fairy folk. Thank you. Okay, we'll take a couple of quick questions, all right? Yes, you have your hand up first. Did I write that story? No. Okay, did you hear that question? I was asked, did I write that story? That story is a folk tale, okay? And a folk tale is a story that was made up hundreds of years ago. And people didn't write back then because people didn't know how to write. But they made them up in their head and they told the stories to each other. And they were told to the next people, and they would tell it to the children, then the children would tell it to their children, and it was passed on for years and years and years. And it's only maybe in the last 100 years that those stories have started to be collected. And that's what the folklore department does. They collect up those stories that people knew, and they recorded them, and now we have them written down. They weren't written down until recently. So no, it's not my story, but it's been around a long time. Let's get another, we'll take a few questions, and then we'll have another story, and then we'll have more questions. So, yeah, this boy here. Wait, just wait now. Is it a true story? Whoa. I don't know. Do you think it's true? Okay. Well, I'll tell you. I have met people, older people, who say they met fairies in their time, that they'd meet them at the well when people had to go to the water. So I don't know. Maybe it's true. But there's certainly something we can learn from it. Yeah, this girl here.
So last year at school, I didn't wear a costume because my mom didn't believe that I was allowed to wear my costume.
Mhm.
And they didn't.
Well, you see, maybe the fairies don't come to America.
Schools?
Uh,
Kind of.
maybe. But you see, the fairies in Ireland, do you know the way you see books now and you'll see pictures on TV of fairies and the wings like Tinkerbell? The fairies in Ireland, they're not like that. The fairies in Ireland were small people who lived in Ireland till the new people came, big people, and then they had to live under the ground. So they're not nice, they're horrible, and they're nasty. So they're very different from the fairies that you'd have here. Yeah. Yeah, this girl here. Oh.
How do you know fairies used to change things destroy so long time ago?
Because people would have had encounters with the fairies, and they would have told the stories of what happened, and then they told them to somebody else, and then they would tell them to somebody else, and they were passed down from. If you imagine your grandmother telling your mother, and your mother telling you, and then you telling your children, and they tell their children, and it gets passed down for hundreds of years. So that's how we get to know the stories. So this girl here. Yeah. The stories have been passed down for hundreds of years. Many hundreds of years. Yeah? Okay, we'll have another story, and then we'll have more questions. Okay? I'm going to tell you another story. No, story first, and then we'll have questions, okay? So, because if not, we'll have no stories, and it'll be all questions. And I know you've got loads of questions, and I love answering questions, but I want you to have some stories as well. So this story has a witch in it. And witches in Ireland, I have to tell you, again, are a bit different from the witches you're thinking of. Because witches in Ireland are like, well, they're pretty ordinary looking people. But do you know how they disguise themselves? They disguise themselves as hares. Now, you know what a hare is? Yeah.
A horse.
No, not a horse.
The fish.
Not a fish.
A bunny.
It's like a rabbit, but bigger. Okay, so yeah. So it looks like a bit like a rabbit, but it's a bigger animal and very fast. No, not a bear. It's only about this size. No, it looks like a rabbit, but it's just a little bit bigger and much faster than a rabbit. That's all. That's what a hare is. No. No. Listen. Shh. Listen carefully. A hare is just like a rabbit, except it's a bit bigger. It's got bigger legs at the back, but it's only about this size. So it's just like that. Well, no. Yeah.
Rats are giant, but they're just like this size, so that's giant.
Well, maybe. Well, anyway, let's have the story. And this story I was told by a man who used to come about when I was a kid, when I was about your age. This man would come to our street on his bicycle. And what he did was he came and he would sharpen the knives for your house. You know, the knives that you needed for chopping up the food. And he would use his bicycle and he would pedal on it, and he had a stone on it, and he would sharpen the knife for you. And he traveled all over the country. And he told us this story, that when he was a kid, in the village where he lived, that there was a tailor. Now, a tailor is somebody who makes clothes. And this tailor was a traveling tailor. He would come around once a year, and all the people would come, and he would make clothes for them. This man, let me tell you about this man first. One day, they noticed that on the back of his neck, there wasn't hair, but there was grey fur. And they thought, what is going on? And this is how he got that grey fur. As I said, he travelled all through Ireland. And there was one place that he went to, and he stayed with this family every year. And he had known the man for years and years and years, long before he ever got married. And when he got married, His wife was very friendly, but there was something about her that the man, the tailor, didn't like. There was something a bit strange about this woman. And every year he would come, she would always made him welcome, made him lovely food and gave him a hot bed. Well, then one year he came to that village, and when he came, he had sadness in his heart because he had heard that the man, well, his friend had died. And he was very sad and he wouldn't see him. And as he was coming to the village, he wondered if he could still stay in the man's house. And when he arrived, there was the woman, and she waved. She said, "Tailor, you're welcome. Come, please, stay here with me as usual." And the tailor says, "I'm sorry for your loss. Your husband was a good man and a good friend." She said, "I know, he was a great man, and he was a good friend to you, and you were always a good friend to him. Come." And she sat him down at the table, and there was a big feast for him to eat. And he filled his belly with food, and after walking a long distance, he was tired, and he said, "I'm going away to bed now, good night." And off he went up, and he fell fast asleep. But he was awoken suddenly the next morning. He was awoken by a strange sound. It was a scraping sound that went, and then he heard a splash, and then he heard footprints, and he heard the door, and then there was silence. And he lay in the bed, wondering what was happening, what was going on downstairs. Now he was nervous. He didn't like the sound of what was happening. It was very early, and he didn't want to disturb the woman. But he was also very curious. And he lay there trying to imagine, what were those sounds? What could it be? What could it be? And eventually, he got up the courage to take a peek. He got out of the bed very carefully and very quietly. He went to the door, he lifted the latch and opened it. It didn't make a sound. And then he came out and he looked down the stairs. And there he could see a large tin bath, like a bath in your house, like a big basin. And it had kind of milky coloured water in it. And he wondered, what could it be? And he was about to start walking down the stairs when suddenly he opened the front door, and the door opened. He ran back into his bedroom and pretended that he was asleep. The woman called, "Your breakfast is ready, Tailor." And he came down. And when he came down, he looked all around, and he couldn't see anything. He could see a slight scrape on the ground, and he could see wet footprints, but that was it. Well, he just sat and ate his breakfast. And that day, he worked on making clothes for people all day long. But he was determined to find out what was happening. The next morning, he woke early. He woke early and he listened. And he heard the water. He heard the scrape of the bath. Then he heard splash, and he heard footprints, and disappeared. And now he was curious. What was going on? He moved over to the door carefully, and he listened. There was no sound. And then he held back the door, and he peeked down. And there was the bath of water. It was still there. And he wondered what was going on. And he started to creep down the stairs. And when he was just halfway down, suddenly he heard footsteps at the door again. And he ran back up, but this time he didn't go into the room because he wanted to see what was happening. He hid himself against the wall, and he peeked down. And then he saw, he couldn't believe it, because in came a hare. And the hare jumped into the tub of water, and out from the tub of water jumped the woman. Well, now he knew what was happening. He knew why he always felt strange about that woman. She was a witch. And she was going about her business in the local area by disguising herself as a hare. And hares would do that. And they would come and they would steal the milk and the eggs from other people's farms. Well, now he knew he had to tell people. He had to warn them of what was going on. But he needed to find out more. So he went back into bed and pretended that he was asleep. The next morning, he got up early, and he was ready this time. He heard the scrape of water. He heard a splash, and he heard a woman jump out, and he could hear the footprints. And what did he do? Well, he ran down the stairs, and he jumped in to the tub of water, and he turned into a hare. And he jumped out, and he followed her out along the fields. He watched as the hare went running up the edge of the field, and he kept back, but trotted on after her, up and up and up and up, into a stand of trees and into a clearing. And when he came into that clearing, he couldn't believe it, because there in the clearing were hundreds of hares, all the witches gathered in one place. Well, he watched very carefully, waited to see what was going to happen. And then the biggest of the hares stood up and said, "We have an imposter. And they all froze. And they all turned and looked, and they looked straight at the man who was now disguised as a hare. Well, he was terrified. He ran off as fast as he could because he thought, what would they do to him? They would surely kill him. He ran down through the fields as fast as he could. And the woman who he had stayed in the house with, she came running after, determined to catch him. And she came running as fast as she could. And the man ran into the house. He jumped into the tub of water and jumped back out, and he was back in his human form. He ran up the stairs into his room, barred the door behind him, gathered his belongings, and jumped out through the top window and scurried down the drain pipe and ran off up the road. And just as he was running up the road, he heard, "Taylor!" And he turned around, and there was the woman, the witch. And she was looking at him saying, "I'll get you for this." And he ran on as fast as he could, determined that the witch wasn't going to get him. And where did he go? Well, he went running to the other houses. He went running to the other houses to tell all the people in the area that the woman was, in fact, a witch. He felt bad, but people had to know. And then they realized why all their milk and their eggs had been disappearing and been stolen. And they all went to the house to make sure that the witch, well, to catch her and get rid of her. And when they got there, of course, she was already gone. She was never seen again, at least not in her human form. And people would watch the land for any hares. Watch out, because they would want to get rid of them. Well, the man moved on, the tailor, and he went about his business, traveling from place to place. The next town he came to was the town where the man that I was talking to lived. And he was only a small child. And of course, when the tailor came, there was lots of excitement. People would gather around because the tailor would bring lots of news from all around the country. And as he was walking along, the boys and girls, they started to point and stare. And they said, "Look at his neck." And they asked him, "What's happened to your neck?" And the tailor said, "My neck? What about it?" He said, "You've got fur on the back of your neck." And he put his hand up and he could feel the line of grey fur. And that line of grey fur got there because he had jumped out of the bath of water just a little bit too quickly. And he was left with the fur from the hair for the rest of his life to remind him of his encounter with the witches. And that's the story. Right, we'll have another couple of questions and then we'll go back there. Look, this girl here. Just wait so you get that. Well, when he jumped into that tub of water, the bath of water, he changed into a hare. And then when he jumped in again, he should have turned fully into a man, but he jumped too quick, so he had a bit left behind. Yeah, that makes sense? Okay. This boy here? Well, witches are magic, aren't they? And obviously the water had some sort of magic in it. Yeah? I guess. Okay? This boy here. Yeah.
Was that a reminder to let him know that whenever he done to a magic water tub, magic water in the tub? Is that a reminder to let him know that he could turn to a hare and not to a man?
Yeah. Yeah. Because he'd have that forever, wouldn't he? To remind him of what had happened that day. Yeah, this boy here.
So if the witches are witches, then why didn't they melt when they went into the water? Because witches melt when they go into the water.
Oh, yeah. You see, Irish witches, they're different. Yeah. So witches are different in different parts of the world, and different things happen to them. Yeah. So the witches in Ireland don't melt in water. Uh-oh. No, they don't. Well, yeah, maybe. This girl here. Oh, did any of my families tell me these stories? Have they been in the stories? Is that what you said? Yeah. Oh, no, I don't think so. I know my dad would have. I remember my dad telling me stories about the banshee. Have you ever heard of the banshee? No. Yeah, the banshee is a wild woman. She's kind of like a fairy woman, but she comes to warn that somebody's going to die, and she would be heard sometimes. I've never heard her, but he heard her. Yeah, so he would have been part of that story. Okay, let's get one more question for this girl here, and then we'll have another story.
How did you know the story?
How do I know the story? Yo, really good question. Everybody hear that question? How do I know these stories? So I know these stories because folklorists went around and collected them off of people. So people would have told these stories in their homes. Do you know the way you watch TV now? And YouTube and all that? Well, before any of that, and people didn't even have electricity, they told each other stories. That was their entertainment. And then people went around, like was mentioned, Seamus Ennis, and he collected stories off people, and they wrote them down. And then there's a folklore collection. So I can look in the folklore collection and find these stories. Now, some of the stories I would learn from people. People still tell you stories. Some stories I make up. And yeah, so that's where they come from. Okay. I'm going to tell you another story, and then we'll have some more questions. All right, how are we doing for time? About 10 minutes? Okay. So, I'm going to tell you this story. This is another story about the fairies. And one thing fairies in Ireland are famous for is having gold. And if you could catch a fairy, you might be able to get that gold. But there's two things you have to know. Just a second now. Two things you have to know if you ever do catch a fairy. The first thing is, in order to hold on to it, you have to look into its eyes. And if you stop looking into its eyes, it disappears. So remember that. Keep looking into its eyes, and then you can hold on to it. The other thing is that the fairies have to tell you the truth. If you ask them a question and you have them, they have to tell you the truth. Well, just a sec. There was this man, and his name was Tom. And Tom loved parties. He loved dancing, and he loved playing music. And he lived on a farm, but he was a lazy farmer, and he did no work. And because he did no work, his fields were full of weeds. And one night, he was heading off into the local town to go to a dance. And he was walking along, and there was a big full moon in the sky, and he was whistling a tune to himself. But then as he came along, he could hear this little tapping noise, a bit like a... And he stopped, and he listened. And he wondered, what could be making that noise? He knew it couldn't be a bird, an animal at this hour of the night. No. And then he went over to the ditch, to the hedge, and he spread back the leaves, and he looked in. And there inside, he saw a little fairyman. And you know what the fairyman was doing? He was making a pair of shoes. Tap, 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 tap. Well, Tom thought to himself, if I can catch him, he'll have gold, and I'll be rich. So he rolled up his sleeves, and he turned back, he pulled back the leaves, and he shot his hand in and caught the little fairy. And the little fairy man was going, let me go, let me go, let me go, let me go. And Tom said, oh, I'm not letting you go. I'm not letting you go until you tell me where your bag of gold is. I don't have a bag of gold. He said, no, you have to tell me the truth. You tell me where the bag of gold is, and it's mine. Oh, said the little fairy man, it's over in that field over there. And Tom was about to look over at the field when he remembered. What did he need to do? Keep looking in his eyes. Oh, he said, you don't trick me like that now, fairy man. Let's go. And he carried him over, keeping him in his eyes, and they climbed into the field. Now he said, exactly where is the gold? It's right under your foot there. Right under my foot here? Yes, he said. And he said, oh, do I have to dig it up? He said, yeah, you have to dig it up. Oh, he says, I'll have to get a shovel. He said, you will? Do you have a shovel? He said to the fairy. And the fairy said, no, I don't have a shovel. I make shoes. "Oh," he said, "now you're trying to trick me. If I go back to my farm and get a shovel, you'll move the gold." "Oh no," said the ferryman. No, no, no. The gold, it stays there. You have until the sun comes up in the morning to dig it up. And once you dig it up before the sun rises, it's yours. But if you don't find it before the sun comes up, well then it'll be mine and I'll take it away." Oh, he said, "Okay, grand." And he let the ferryman go. And he was just about to move when he remembered, how would he ever remember that this was the spot? And then he realized there was a big, tall weeds growing up on the spot, and he thought, "Oh, okay, I come back and I dig under that weed." But then he looked around, and of course, the field was covered in weeds. "Oh, no," he said, "I'll never remember which weed it's under." But then he remembered he had a red scarf in his pocket, and he pulled out the red scarf, and he tied it around the weed, the hogweed that he would come back and find the gold under. And he went off up the road, happy as anything. He was skipping all the way home. He got the shovel. He came all the way back. He jumped into the field. He saw the big weed with the red scarf, and he started digging. And he was digging and digging and digging and digging, digging all night long. He didn't even feel the time going past because all he was thinking about, "I'm going to be rich, I'm going to be rich." And he was digging and digging and digging and digging till eventually, he was worn out. And he looked up. "Oh no," he cried, because there in the sky was the sun. He'd been digging all night long, and he still hadn't found the gold. Well, he threw down the shovel in anger, and he says, "That fairy tricked me." And he climbed up out of the hole, and then he realized that the fairy had tricked him. He hadn't moved the gold, but how had he tricked him? Well, as he looked around the field at all those weeds, every single one of them had a red silk scarf tied onto it. And what had he done? He had dug under the wrong weed. So the fairy had tricked him. He hadn't moved the gold, but he had put a red scarf on every one of the weeds. And he climbed out of the field, and he started to walk up the road home. And as he was walking along, he heard a tiny little voice going, and he knew. Who was it?
The fairy.
The fairy. The fairy who had outsmarted him and tricked him. And he realized after that he was never going to get anything for free, and he was never going to outsmart a fairy. So he went home, and he started working on his farm and got rid of all the weeds. And that's the story. Thank you. So, let's have another few questions, and I'd love to tell you one more story if we have time. Right. Well, we have a story or questions. Oh, you've got loads of questions. Stories, questions. All right, okay. Let's have two quick questions. One from this girl here and one from that boy there. Oh no, yeah, and then this girl as well. Yeah, 'cause you had your hand up a few times. Listen now. What was there? Where was the fairy? What was the fairy doing? Making shoes. Oh, he was pranking him. Yeah, well, he outsmarted him, didn't he? Yeah, he did prank him. So, and this boy here? Yeah. Oh, do you know how he did? Well, I tell you, he was obsessed. All he wanted to do was get gold. And sometimes when people get obsessed with things, they just go, 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 and they don't stop. And they don't think. He didn't think. Because he just jumped in the field, he saw the first weed and started digging. If he had stopped to think about it, he might have realized, whoa, I'm in the wrong place. So when people get obsessed with things, that takes over. And this girl here, you had a question. How did he not know the fairy was lying to him? Because he was looking in his eyes. Well, you see, the fairy didn't lie to him. He told him the truth. He told him the gold is there. You have to get it before the morning. But then once he left, the fairy magic the scarves all around. So he never lied to him, but he did trick him. So there is a difference. Yeah? It's a little bit different, but there is a difference. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you one more story, right? And we'll make this a kind of a quick one. I'll make it quick. So, where I grew up in County Wexford, there's a big old house. And this house, we used to see it as kids, and we were terrified to go near this house because of this story. And this is a story that my dad would have told me. And the reason we were afraid of this house, because once there was a big party in this house. Listening? And it's called Loftus Hall. And they loved having parties there, and everybody would come for the party. And everybody would gather in the main room, and they would eat beautiful food, and they would chat. The thing is, this is down in a place called the Hook Peninsula. And the Hook Peninsula is the oldest lighthouse in the world at the bottom of it, because lots of ships drowned there, and lots of sailors were drowned. And people said it was a very scary, wild place. And the wind was blowing, it sounded like the voices of those sailors shouting out for help as they drowned in the cold nights. Well, on this night, the wind started to howl, and people started to feel a bit kind of uncomfortable and shivery. And you know when the wind finds a little crack and it makes all that howling noise, and they started to feel a bit scared. But the man of the house, Tottenham, said, let's enjoy ourselves and forget about what's outside. And everybody started to chat. But then a short time later, there was a loud knock on the door. And the door was open. And when the door was open, there was standing a tall young man. He had a hat and a cloak, and he was soaked. And Tottingham looked and said, does anybody know him? And they said, no. Well, he's a gentleman, he's welcome. And in he came, and he joined in the party. And within a short time, everybody there was listening to him. He had wonderful stories to tell. He had travelled all over the world. And the one person that was listening to him the most was Anne. And Anne was Tottingham's daughter. And she was beautiful. She was said to be the most beautiful woman in the whole of Ireland. But she knew it. Whenever any of the men would ask her to dance or even to get married, she would just go, I'm too good for you, and walk away. But the stranger was different. Oh, he was handsome. And she looked at him, and she listened to every word that he had to say. And then, in those days, people went into different parts of the house. Some they went into the dining or into the ballroom where they would dance and sing songs around the piano. Others went into the front parlour. And there, in the front parlour, was a round table with 12 chairs around it. And in there went Tottingham, in there went the stranger, and in there went Anne, along with some of the other guests. And they sat around that table for a long time, playing cards and gambling late into the night. And at about 3 o'clock in the morning, Tottingham, he was tired, and he got up, and he excused himself, and he said good night to all the guests. And he went over, and he gave Anne a kiss on the cheek. And he left the room, and he headed off up the stairs. And he was happy with himself, because it had been a wonderful party, and everybody was having a great time, and everybody was laughing and enjoying themselves. His foot landed on the top step of the wooden staircase, when suddenly he heard a scream, "Father!" Well, he went running back down the stairs as fast as he could. And he went into the room because he knew it was Anne and something was wrong. He ran into the room, and there everybody sat with their mouths hanging open, staring up at the roof. And there in the roof was a hole in the roof with the rain pouring in. "What has happened in here?" said Tottingham. And nobody could speak. They were all terrified. And he shook Anne and said, "Anne, what happened?" And she pointed across and she said, "It was him," pointing to the empty chair where the stranger had been sitting. She said, "I dropped the card to the ground, and when I bent down to pick it up, I looked across, and there I couldn't see the feet of a human. Instead, I saw the cloven hoof of the devil himself." And when she called out for help, he jumped up out of the chair, out through the roof, and disappeared. Well, now everybody came, and they heard this, and they all decided to leave the house there and then that night. And poor Anne, she was so upset and terrified by what had happened, she went to her room, and she was never again seen in public. And the family moved away from that house because they said it was haunted, possessed. Every time they tried to fix the roof, the hole would come back. And the house was sold on and sold on and sold on. And when I was a young boy, maybe a little bit older than you guys, we used to go down there at night time to go fishing. But we were afraid to go near the house. And sometimes we'd see lights in the windows and wonder what was going on. But we would never, never go in there for fear of what we might meet. And that's the story of Loftus Hall. Thank you. I think that's all we have time for, guys. Let's go back to school. Yay! Yay!
How about another thank you for Joe Brennan, everybody? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If we wanted to know more about Irish folk tales, how can we read more or hear more stories?
You listen, guys. So to hear more folk tales, actually there are some books over there of folk tales, and one of them is a lovely collection by a man called Malachy Doyle, who's a friend of mine. I just noticed it there. I forgot to show you this. I have a book which is called Donegal Folk Tales. So these are all folk tales from where I live. Some of them I collected for the first time, other ones that have been around for a long time, and there's one or two in there that I told you today. Okay. So, actually, maybe I could give this for your school library. Yeah? Would you take that for your school? I'll sign it before I give it to you, and then before you go. And then you can read these as well. And you can also look up folk tales. There is a collection of folk tales in Ireland called the Schools Collection, which you can read online now. And these were all stories that children your age would have collected back in 1932 from their parents and grandparents. And it's a very famous collection that gathered up loads of folk stories at that time. And it's a real treasure trove of folk tales. But the library is always the best place to start, isn't it? How many people go to the library? Good. Everybody should go to the library, because you'll find lots of stories. And I have one other request for you, okay? Because stories, I always think stories are like an amazing gift. But it's a kind of magical gift, because it's a gift that you can keep, but you can also give away. So how do you give a story away? By telling someone. So when you go home today, maybe you could tell one of these stories to somebody at home. And maybe sometimes when you tell somebody a story, they tell you one back. So it's a good exchange, isn't it? So tell other people the stories. Because these stories are not meant to be locked up in books. They're supposed to be given around. So that's important. Share the stories. All right? Thank you.